I still remember the clinking of glasses that night, the laughter echoing across the hall, the polite applause when my colleagues raised their champagne to toast my retirement. 40 years of work, 40 years of sacrifice, and here I was, finally closing one chapter of my life. But what no one knew, not even my son, was that I had been watching the careful smirk on my daughter in law's lips as she leaned too close to her mother, whispering, her eyes darting to me as if measuring her timing. She thought she was clever. She thought I wouldn't notice the way she palmed her glass, the faint flick of her fingers as something slipped from her hand into the golden fizz of my drink. The world likes to believe poison is loud, dramatic, but it is not. It is silence disguised as sweetness, bitterness hiding beneath celebration. She had underestimated me. I saw her eyes, fixed on mine as though she was already rehearsing my collapse, the gasps, the panic, the grief that would follow. But I did not flinch. Instead, I smiled, lifted my glass, and in that single heartbeat before anyone could notice, I switched it with her mother's. A subtle slide, so small it looked like nothing more than clumsy hands at a crowded table. And then I waited. Her mother laughed, raised the glass high, toasted to my future, and drank deeply. My daughter-in-law's expression was priceless. I saw the corners of her mouth twitch, saw the panic bloom behind her perfect smile. She looked at me then, searching my face for recognition, for fear, but I gave her none. I gave her only the same calm I had given the world for 40 years, the calm of a woman who has seen betrayal before and has grown tired of pretending to be blind. The room filled with chatter, plates clattering, forks scraping across porcelain as the music played on. Yet my eyes never left her. My daughter-in-law kept glancing at her mother, waiting for something to happen, waiting for me to falter. I could see her pulse racing at her throat, the way her hand tightened around her napkin until it tore. Her mother was still smiling, still laughing, sipping the poisoned champagne as though it were nothing more than sparkling joy. It must have been agony for her, that slow crawl of realization. She couldn't snatch the glass back, couldn't scream without exposing herself. She was trapped in her own game, watching her plan devour the wrong prey. And I sat perfectly still, my lips curved in a quiet smile, savoring every drop of her panic. When her mother began to cough, heads turned. At first, people brushed it off as nothing, a bit of champagne gone down the wrong way, perhaps. But then the coughing deepened, ragged and wet. The laughter died in an instant. Chairs scraped back, voices rose in confusion. I did not move. I folded my hands on my lap and tilted my head slightly, like a woman listening to a song she already knew by heart. My daughter-in-law's hand shot out, gripping her mother's arm, her face pale, lips trembling. She whispered frantic words, but it was too late. Her mother's eyes were wide, her face flushed red, then sickly pale. She slumped against the table, the glass slipping from her hand and shattering on the floor. Gasps echoed around the hall as people rushed to help. My son was already calling for an ambulance, his voice sharp with fear. And through it all, she sat frozen, her perfect little world unraveling in front of her. I leaned closer across the table, letting my words fall soft enough for her ears alone. Next time you plan someone's death, I said, make sure you don't sit them across from a woman who's been fighting battles since before you were born. Her eyes widened, her mask cracked, and for the first time since she married my son, I saw her stripped of arrogance, naked in her terror. The paramedics arrived quickly, their uniforms a blur of blue and white in the chaos. They knelt by her mother, checking vitals, voices urgent and clipped. Guests whispered among themselves, eyes darting from the stricken woman to me, to my daughter-in-law, to the half-empty glass glinting with shards on the floor. Suspicion was already beginning to stir in the room, like smoke rising from a fire. My daughter-in-law trembled, hovering near the paramedics but saying nothing, not daring to reveal what she knew. Her silence condemned her more than words ever could. I sat still, dignified, letting the weight of decades of respect shield me. I was the celebrated retiree, the loyal colleague, the mother, the grandmother. She, however, was just the ambitious wife, always too polished, too eager, her eyes always calculating. Tonight, that calculation had betrayed her. As they lifted her mother onto a stretcher, I stood. The crowd parted for me, as though instinctively they understood I was the one to watch, the one holding the unspoken truth. I walked slowly, deliberately, to my daughter-in-law, her hands clutched at her pearls, her eyes wet, but not with grief, no, with fear. I leaned in again, my voice calm, almost gentle, though it cut sharper than a blade. You thought I was weak because I smile, because I give, because I let the world think I am harmless. But you forgot. Women like me survive because we see everything, every lie, every shadow. Her lips parted, but no sound came out. She wanted to plead, to explain, but the words died in her throat. My son rushed to her side, oblivious, worried for her shaking frame. He wrapped an arm around her, whispering reassurance, while she pressed her face against him, hiding her guilt behind a veil of false tears. And in that moment, I pitied her, not because she had failed, but because she had revealed her hand too soon. Revenge is not about striking hard. It is about striking when the world least expects it, when your enemy has already dug their own grave. She had given me everything I needed, and I was not finished. Not yet. The party dissolved into chaos after that. Some guests followed the stretcher, others stayed behind, whispering, speculating, clinging to fragments of what they had just witnessed. My son tried to steady his wife, his face pale, his words frantic. He didn't notice how she couldn't meet my gaze, how her shoulders stiffened every time my eyes fell on her. But others noticed. People always notice, even if they pretend not to. When the hall finally quieted, I made my way to the stage, where my farewell speech had been waiting. The microphone hummed softly, and the lights turned toward me. I looked out over the crowd, faces worried, confused, expectant. I gave them a smile, steady and serene, and began to speak, not of betrayal, not of poison, but of resilience, of the lessons learned in decades of surviving storms, of standing tall when the world tried to bend me. My words rang with strength, and the guests applauded, their faith in me unshaken, if anything, stronger. And while they clapped, I let my gaze drift back to her. She sat small in her chair, dwarfed by shadows, her mask slipping as she realized what I had taken from her. Not just her plan, not just her secret, but her power. I had turned her own move against her, and she would spend the rest of her days knowing that I knew, that I could ruin her with a single whisper. That knowledge was my weapon, sharper than any blade, heavier than any chain. In the weeks that followed, her mother lingered in hospital, fragile but alive. The doctors never quite explained what had happened, though rumors spread like wildfire. Some whispered of food poisoning, others of hidden illness. I said nothing. I didn't need to. Every time my daughter-in-law met my eyes across the dinner table, she flinched. Every time she raised a glass, her hand trembled. And so my revenge was not loud, not bloody. It was silence. It was control. It was the invisible chain that bound her to me, the unspoken knowledge that she had failed, that she owed me her secret and her fear. That is the sweetest revenge of all, watching your enemy live every day in the prison they built for you, only to find themselves trapped inside instead. I never spoke of it again. I didn't need to. She knows, I know, and that is enough.